Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome once again Monday night to An Imperfect Union, the political consciousness of West Coast Steelers fan. May have a little trouble this evening. I've had some trouble with my email trying to get some of my usual suspects in. But hopefully, Dr. Casey and Brother Williams and Miss Sims will be joining me. I had to send out an SOS for Mr. Scott. Uh, Hopefully, we can hear from him later this evening. But they, as usual, there are a couple of very ludicrous statements going around, and I thought we would discuss them on the program. The first being the new New York City mayor saying that it's because of the liberal policies that let me grab this thing here. It says that liberal policies are causing a surge in crime. Liberal policies. And it kind of makes me wonder and start looking upon dates and causes and and effects, things like this. Um, One of the reasons, and this, of course, it has to be all about the pandemic. Uh, Excuse me one moment here. Let me uh, make sure that okay. Um, I just want to make sure. Uh, okay. Um, Let me resend these to a couple people here. Um, let's see. Okay. I just wanted to as I said, I was having some trouble with okay. Um, Now, let's talk about this nonsense of liberal policies causing a rise in crime. First of all, we have to remember 2 years ago when the COVID epidemic struck at its hardest, in order to reduce the population within most counties and states, there was in most cases, I think it was a law or an amendment to a law. I know we voted for it here in San Diego, I believe, during the primary 2 years ago, I want to say. But anyhow, the law was so that we would not have an influx of prisoners within the system going in and out of county jails and overburdening the present court system because of the restrictions placed on by COVID. I believe in most instances, people that were stealing or that had a record of stealing less than $1,000 or $1,500 were not being locked up. They were being given later dates. I see Dr. Casey is in the stream. Dr. Casey, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine. A little bit behind because of my own stupidity with my email, but we won't talk about that right now. But uh, I was discussing uh, the New York mayor, and I've heard this from more than one source, that liberal policies are causing havoc within the criminal justice system and increasing crime. And I was stating that I know here in California, and I believe it was also in New York. I'm not sure about your laws in Georgia, but uh, a lot of this was due not due to a liberal policy, but because of COVID and because of people in jail and people not having court dates and things of this nature, because they didn't want the court system. One, the court system was already overtaxed. Uh, Two, people being exposed, and three, just the sheer fact that our court system was already overwhelmed before COVID started. What do you think about this excuse that it was liberal policies that are causing an increase in crime?
Normally in politics, but wait, before I say that, since we're talking about New York, rest in peace, DJ Slay. He passed away, and that was my dog, so I need to shout him out first. So normally in politics, it is a lot of blame and deflect. So if I can deflect the attention or the problem from myself, then I can blame it on somebody else. And then that's where normally there is no accountability. That's where the lack of accountability in most government or any corporation business policy is just people not being accountable, not saying, okay, look, this is what I am going to do. This is my responsibility. This is what I signed up for, and this is how I'm going to take care of it. Instead, it's easier to say, you know what, they're the problem or that's the problem, instead of trying to really find the problem and solve the problem. Um, you just deflect it, and you give an excuse and a reason to why it's not working, even if there is not really an excuse or a reason.
Now, another thing, and I've tried to talk about this numerous occasions because I know it happens here in San Diego. It's baseball season. It's happening again, and we've seen examples of the New York mayor uh, sending in police to basically kick these people out of homeless camps. Um, a lot of these encampments, um, and I don't know how your particular city deals with them, but um, one of the things that I've seen that I think would we could use. There are a lot of empty lots around different cities, and you could just like Sheriff Arapaho or whatever his name is in Arizona set up these tent cities for prisoners. You could do something similar. I'm not saying you have to lock the gates and like that, but you could do something similar where cities could have designated areas for homeless people to go to.
Yeah.
Now, rather than which it seems like it would make sense, and I know a lot of people, and we'll go back to New York here as an example. The subway system.
Mhm. That
Mayor,
debacle
Mayor
of
Giuliani actually had the police go down into the subway system and kick homeless people out. Where these were tracks, some of them were used, and I mean, they weren't really posing a problem to the general public. A lot of our homeless, and we know this because of statistics, have mental issues. We have closed mental facilities for the most part, and there's still that stigma about mental health. I mean, people can say what they want, but I mean, when you see someone, that's outside talking to themselves, whatever, I mean, the first thing we say is, "Oh, that person's crazy."
Mhm.
But what do you see as a viable alternative for all of these cities that have a vast homeless population? I mean, Atlanta, and we're not all, when we saying homeless, I mean, I'm including everyone, minorities, veterans, whoever they may be.
So, here we have a city or a community driven um company called Love Beyond Walls. I'll shout them out. They actually go directly and help the homeless people. They have set up showers and mobile showers and mobile different options for them to be able to wash clothes and things in that nature. So, on a larger scale, that is the only organization that I know that really does a lot of work within the city of Atlanta. Um, However, of course, there are shelters. There are people that always feed the homeless and things like that. I don't know that there is a like a tent city or anything like that in Atlanta. I always see the homeless people up under bridges, highways and byways, stuff like that. And definitely downtown in the heart of the city. But I know that they made it illegal for some of that camping out within the city. So I don't think that as many people are in the city like that. But Atlanta is a little bit different. Um, the homeless population to me is a little bit different. So it's no way to fix homelessness except for to use the failing housing market to do that because there's so many empty and vacant houses to where it's enough room to house homeless people, but nobody wants to take that financial hit. It goes back to that blame and point the responsibility to somebody else. Nobody wants to take the financial hit of housing homeless people unless they come up with some type of a bill or legislative law that gives money for homeless people. If not, people are not interested. I don't know why people aren't interested because homeless people matter just as much as anyone else. Matter of fact, sometimes homeless people start out homeless because of displacement or something. When I was 17, I was homeless after my mom tried to kill me and kick me out. So, but the military was my saving grace from homelessness. And sometimes it's just, people that come out of the closet as gay, lesbian, trans, or bisexual, they experience homelessness. People definitely with mental issues experience homelessness. Now, when you talk about talking to yourself, I don't think that a lot of these mental, quote unquote, mental issues are not always a mental issue, in my opinion. Some things are um, spiritual things that's going on with the person that oftentimes science can't account for. So, like, um, amongst Black people, okay, I go to therapy regularly, and when I go to my white doctors, they're unfamiliar with dreams and any type of psychic type of ability that may exist. They are less likely to think of as common. But when I had a black doctor, she was like, "Oh yeah, well that's normal." And so, depending on who you're dealing with, will determine how a mental illness is viewed, but largely it is a spiritual warfare within your mind. And I won't even always say it's a warfare. A person that's schizophrenic could be seeing spirits that's not here physically. That doesn't necessarily mean that that person has a mental problem because can't nobody else see the spiritual um, entity that is present. But because the way our society is set up, that have been really pit against any type of spirituality outside of Christianity, um, that is the hindrance because if you see spiritual things and it's not Jesus, and even if you say you've seen Jesus physically or the presence of a spirit, they're still going to try to lock you up, basically. So some of these things, just like when I think about ADHD and some of these other things, a hyperactive kid is a kid that needs more to do, not somebody that needs to be put on medicine. Even when I think about autism, most times autistic children are the most um smart and intelligent children that you will find. They just don't function like the way other people function. So when I think of mental health, studying psychology, human behavior, spirituality, my mindset goes different because I know that science doesn't account for spirituality. Now, I also will say that it is healthy to talk to yourself. Sometimes you may be thinking about something, and instead of answering what you're thinking about or talking to yourself in your head, it just comes out. It's not mental illness. Is actually pretty normal. If you need expert advice, who the hell else you gonna go to about your own life other than yourself and God? Because guess what? Don't nobody else know what you done been through, what you done seen, or none of that. So even as a life coach in that capacity, it's only so much that I can tell you about your life. My goal is to help you figure out your life and those intricate details about why, when, where, and how. Um, Now, to fix the homelessness problem, because that was a whole lot of long spiel. Again, I think the best way to tackle it would be all of these foreclosed, empty homes, abandoned homes can be fixed up and in some cases turned into semi-group style homes. The problem when you try to house homelessness is one of the main problems is um, getting people that cohabitate together well. Um, in tent cities or in bulk outside is problems. It'll be even more problems if that was in a residence, because you don't have anywhere to go to. So it can work, but you got to get somebody that's willing to sacrifice in order to put somebody ahead of their money, and you know that that's not likely.
Well, I got two things there. First of all, your experience was totally different from mine. And now I'm out here in California. It's really different because it's usually been white or Asian or uh, people from other nations, doctors that expound the spiritual part and the nature part of your mind and how to use alternative medicines. Most of the time, and I'll say, when I say most of the time, I'm going to say at least 67% of the time, a black doctor tried to get me to go to church and save my soul. But that's all.
You
But
know how we both feel about that because
right, right,
that's part of the problem why people
right.
are assumingly most times often depressed. Most times that leads to homelessness. A lot of times a lot of these homeless people are probably getting put out of Christian homes because they're doing something, saying something, being something that religion doesn't approve
Broadcast.
of, and then it
On the
makes
broadcast. I'm sorry.
it makes them be an outcast. So yeah. We both have our feelings about religion and how that pushes people into desperate and adverse times.
And one of as a matter of fact, the place where the mayor of New York was talking about uh, raiding one of these homeless camps was a building that had been purchased 20 years ago by a private organization and it had never been put to use. And these are, like you said, I mean, there are plenty of buildings that, we could use uh, for such a thing. I mean, of course, usually, I mean, whenever you put a bunch of people into a building, there are going to be some problems to work out initially. But one of the things, my biggest thing is if you're going to displace these people that are already displaced, where are you going to put them? I don't. I mean, it could sound selfish if you want to, but like it took me X number of years to get my neighborhood back to normal. I don't want the police running these people back into my neighborhood. If you're going to displace them, find some place to put them. Miss Sims, how are you doing this evening?
Well, I was putting things that have been happening to me over the last weekend fit the lyrics of that song. They paved paradise and put up a parking lot, which means
What song is that?
it's a long. So James, James may recognize it. from one of the groups, but it was doing the 60. You probably weren't born yet there.
I know I wasn't.
It kind of the phrase kind of means, how ridiculous and what an asshole type of thinking. But other than that, I'm present and accounted for. I'm glad to be
uh,
here.
I was talking about the mayor of New York, but I could also apply just as well out here in San Diego. And I know you have your own homeless problems up in Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area. But the argument is that it's liberal policies that are creating this crime wave. And what I'm saying is that this is kind of ludicrous to blame it on liberal policies when the original reasons for cutting down on uh, this population or making sure that we only locked up people that has stole X number of dollars was because of the COVID situation. It was also because there was not, as usual, there weren't any jail cells available. Had nothing to do with liberal policies. It had to do with overcrowding. Had to do with overtaxed court dockets. What's your take on this, Miss Sims? Once again, are we being thrown scare tactics here?
Where what's wrong? I don't know if I put it under scare tactics, but we're I think we're by using the phrase liberal and things like that and putting on various categories, we're not really facing the truth of the situation and how it can be changed, or a thing that can be added to the mix to make changes, um, policy and procedures and the actual conditionings that are happening. When you use the word term, and when you brought up, sent the topics up tonight, I actually went in and looked up the word liberal, and the way it's being used is kind of opposite in terms of what the definitions are. So here again, it kind of fits what I'm saying, that not knowing or questioning how people are using certain words and what those words literally mean as described by the dictionary. And then there's meanings, other definitions that have evolved in the way people in a society will use them. It can be erroneous. And going along that line, if you don't somehow connect with or question the what's going on, then you will be find yourself being thrown under the bus kind of at the last minute, or in terms of survival, or feeling helpless in various aspects of how to deal with the situation, James.
Uh, you have a homeless population in your particular two cities, and I've heard you talk about it many times on different venues. Our Black News being one of them. Uh, what would you suggest? Dr. Casey and I were talking about some of these abandoned buildings, some of these abandoned lots. Where you could possibly provide for homeless. As I was saying, uh, it makes very little sense to me to break up these homeless communities if you don't have somewhere for them to go?
Uh, True in regards to feeling, getting to the point of feeling, hopelessness. What can we do? I've been dealing with the homeless, unsheltered population issues for years now. In fact, the organization, faith-based organization, I retired from as a community organizer, MICA, which stands for Metropolitan Interfaith Council on Affordable Housing, which considers housing not being that just a structure that one lives in, but it includes the community, the health and wealth and well-being of the community, the people, etc., etc. In fact, the director of that of MICA is president of the National Coalition of the Homeless. And one of the things we did as an organization that we're still involved in, and it's been going on for a couple of years now, is the second actual organization of homeless and unsheltered persons that Micah and that particular group called Freedom from the Streets actually joined in partnership or collaborated in regards to the various things representing homelessness and the various things that they were involved in. Now, this particular group has, and this leader who is Janelle Anderson, um, referred to several things that we've done as an organization to promote what they want and the direction they want to go into. We first were their fiscal agents in regards to, and we helped them accumulate or acquire various grants, and a lot of that is in and help them to organize themselves. That's what they want to do, and I think it's the right thing to organize themselves in regards to being people who have experienced or in the realms of experiencing homelessness. We within the last year or so, the leader of that organization, Janelle Anderson, has acquired. They've acquired a 501c3 for for that organization, and so they want to be now at the point of working with us interdependently. As in the beginning, of the first couple of years, there was a dependent, more so of a dependent relationship in regard for us help facilitate some of the needs and the things that were out there, the people that were out there, to help them to get them to facilitate them getting where they want to go. Recently, we've been involved in uh, connecting them, showing them, and introducing them, for a better word, to various political persons at the legislature and in the neighborhood, and helping set up. We have weekly Friday meetings, and it's come to for various entities of the social structure actually comes to these meetings from the Hennepin County, from Ramsey County, from the various councils and housing agents and things like that are invited to these meetings, and a lot of times they come. Uh, and whereas always keeping in mind, following we take our and we collaborate a lot with where the leaders of that organization want to go. In fact, they've even introduced and wrote a uh, Bill of Rights for the organization, and we help them present it at the legislature. And I think it's come about, whereas they didn't turn it down, but I think the solution came about that they are forming a task group to study the issue, as if it's like getting ready to get ready. Don't know what's already out there, and so even the group per se, with the help of someone, has even authored a book and it's out there on Amazon. And they were instrumental in helping getting uh, some of the things that I heard when I came in. Heard Dr. Casey speak of helping get some of the during the winter and whatever, a lot of the unsheltered population out of off the street into various hotels and motels, and they're actually gone in and helped mediate some of the things that have come about in people's behavior, etc., etc. And so,
But but
generally, I'm getting to this. Generally, I think our society uh, deals with things socially on two models: the social service model, which basically can get down to saying you get what I want you to have, when I want you to have, and how much I want you to have. Now go away, kid. Don't bother until the next time. The social justice model says, what can we do, or I do, to help you to to help facilitate the direction and things that you want to do. Right now, I think here in Minnesota, we operate still strongly under the social service model because it's easier for people to do in terms of there are lots of people volunteering and bringing in food, and agencies provide help to find housing, etc., etc., etc. The social justice model, which I haven't found anyone latch on too strongly yet. The social justice model, uh, it needs to be further developed and put out there in the message given openly. And until we bring that social, because the social justice model says and allows and says that you're going to confront the issue head on with whomever it may be, even Wall Street, because money is being made off the homeless, unsheltered population. And one of my friends said one time to me, it's expensive to be poor, and that is, and so that social just and until that social justice model, social justice is confronted more and strongly and seriously, we are the homeless and shelter population issues aren't going to go away. They simply aren't because uh, people continue to become homeless through various means of their own or other circumstances.
Miss Sims, are
Yes.
those rose are those rose-colored glasses that you got on there?
No, this is
Uh,
reality.
uh,
This is reality,
no,
James. Understand?
reality is that there is no such thing as social justice. Social justice died with those five little girls back in Birmingham. We have not had social justice before or after. So
You
now,
know, and
now
I take that as a subjective definition and meaning and whatever. And you're sincere. I take you
yeah,
sincerely,
I am
but I
sincere.
can't do a
I'm
blank. I
still,
can't do
I'm
that
still, I'm still
blanket
trying to get.
evaluation.
I'm still trying to get the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed, and it's it's 2022, not 1968.
That's right. It's
Okay,
a strategy, and I keep saying
as
politics consists of a strategy, and it's a
70,
strategy to
a
be in to keep in
70,
control.
a seven, a 70-year old. I mean, come on, Miss Sims, you and I are in our 70s.
That's right.
A 70-year-old that I mean, the contract that nobody has honored. But
Yes.
let's stick with the homeless here because first of all, the dynamics of homelessness has changed during our generation. It used to be when you saw homeless people back in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. These were usually older people that were displaced either by their families or through some other, some maybe they had some other type of problem. But now, Miss Sims, we have kids that are homeless. We have whole family. I I say ever since I came out here in 2003, I had never seen so many homeless women and children in my life as I had seen out here in California. Of course, the dynamic of moving from Pittsburgh and New Jersey and places like that where it was cold, of course, made it a lot different. Uh, but
along
I
those
keep,
lines along those lines in terms of the youth, one of the things that this organization and one of its leadership is taking a role in the child protection arena, because a lot of the homeless uh, persons, even before they became homeless, especially when they were younger, lost their children to the social services networks out there, child protection, etc., etc. Now there's a group of people that have aged, had different experiences, hopefully matured, and have various thoughts on confronting the system, child protection system, because they want their children back. They want their children back, and listening to the stories that and their experiences that they've had in various instances all over the map, and it'll break your heart. But one of the things that I've said that they should the message that they want out there and are including should be have people to think about when you lose your child uh, to a system, especially permanently, you are uh, messing with the heritage, your bloodline of a family, of whatever. That's a serious and that's a major thing. And I've never heard anybody speak along those lines in regards to helping facilitate people get their children back with wraparound services that they, both the child and the
Miss
family,
Sims, I got a question.
needs. Yes,
Um, y- because you said something about getting your children back, and once your children are taken, and all of those things, but no, that's no different than what they did during slavery when they removed people from their homes,
true.
children and stuff, and then shipped them out and sent them somewhere.
And
The
they never
foster
saw them.
care
Yeah,
and that system, the CPS system, is really, honestly and truly, just a rebranded version of that same thing, if you ask me.
that's
Um,
why. That's exactly why I thought about that. Hey, listen, you're talking about these people's heritage and their bloodline, because during the
but
time
there
that you were
is no
talking about,
heritage. Not see, that's the part. There is no heritage or real strong, serious bloodline because there was none ever seriously um built or that stayed pure in any aspect. Even when I think about, because I'm saying this and I'm thinking about finding again. I went and I searched through all of my family history, got down to my grandmother's grandmother, and she was Native American from Virginia, but even to find authentic Native American heritage, it's hard to find. You know why? Because they were not fucking with the. I mean, they won't. Uh, Fooling with the government in any way, shape, form, or fashion. So they wouldn't even put themselves in that system. The people that were put in that system were dispersed everywhere. So if the mama's here, the daddy's here, the brother, sister, cousin there, and all of these things, then where is the real bloodline at? Because they've already been separated. They've already been displaced. They've already been given to other people and other relatives or whoever, the master or whatever, and then they are left to, and then this is another sense of homelessness, because when you take a child, a person away from their family, if they don't have an established foundation for themselves and you send them off, even when they get to where they're going, if they don't have some sufficient way of self-care, self-sufficiency, then they're going to eventually be homeless. I don't care if you send and somebody get adopted. Once they grow age out of the system, then what? You still back to the same thing. So I hear what you're saying, but and this is one of the reasons why before I talk about the difference between being in touch with what's really going on and your version of the reality of what's going on, because I there is a divide, there is a gap between what you have an understanding of in your mind and then the reality of what's really actually going on a large scale.
If you're speaking to the original and actual bloodline and heritage of a people uninterrupted, I agree with you. Our bloodline was interrupted as soon as persons in Africa were put on
See, but
slave, put
everybody
on slip,
is not from
put
Africa though.
put,
That's
put
that's another
everybody.
aspect of
But
it.
anybody. Well, I'm talking about blacks and African Americans.
Again, all black people are not from Africa. So what that is,
Well, I'm
that's a
talking. Well,
detachment.
that's why I'm saying, in order not to diminish the idea of what I'm saying. Anybody that becomes a slave, their bloodline is interrupted immediately when they are taken from whomever and wherever does it and wherever they go. And I can't dispute that. But when I'm saying bloodline and heritage, I'm speaking of and relating to the what's currently happening to the population, black population and homeless, black and other populations, because more than black people are homeless. The unsheltered population here in Minnesota and around in the United States, we have to pick up and try to save what we have. And I'm saying that if you cause people to stop and think about things that we're talking about, you see that that's important to a people that love and want their people to go forward, their loved ones, their community, and things like that. That's powerful. But and I think once that's more out there being talked about and put in, letting people know that that's part of what's going on, I think people's thoughts will they'll start thinking differently and maybe in a different way, because even and there's what I call it an invisible population of unsheltered, and those are the people that are working every day and going home to mama and daddies and live with parents, etc., etc. Even at the one we had meetings with members from the legislature, some of them were brave enough to say to admit that they themselves had been homeless at one time, and they described the various means, what it was like, and how they came out. So there are a lot of people that are unsheltered or homeless that we don't see visibly with our eyes and that we ignore. And that's another area of the message I think needs to be brought out to people's attention, to the broader society, of the and silenced population of unsheltered people. And I think the more, if they can remain silent and invisible, because number one, they know the negativism associated with being homeless, and they also are able to do that because they have a family or someone that they connect to keep them from being homeless, in the sense of out in the street and shelters and things like that.
Uh, Dr. Casey, what do you think about the changing paradigm of the homelessness? Do you think that a lot of people, when you say homeless, people think of the old perception of homelessness, and that's why they may not be as empathetic? Miss Sims, all
Um,
we can see is the top of your head. You
I
gotta.
know I'm trying to facilitate that. I'll come off camera until I do that.
so I'm in the midst of getting a home repair done. I have a little leak in my bathroom. So if I have to, if you see my mouth moving, but I'm muted, that's because I'm trying to get that service call handled. So
Oh, you mean you're not calling the landlord? You're a homeowner. You got to
I am
fix
a
that stuff.
homeowner.
You
Listen,
got to fix that stuff yourself.
I hate
Oh,
this shit sometimes because I just bought a car, a Jeep outside, and I just spent $1,200 on that, and then I gotta fix this, and it's gonna be another $1,200 or so because it's a leak, and the paint coming off, and the tape coming off is just this mess. Um, so when it comes to homelessness, when it comes to like the ages and the dynamics of who's homeless, I think that it is more of lack of empathy because of lack of connectivity. So if a person doesn't understand how you can be homeless, then they're not going to empathize because most people think that you must be on drugs or you must have did something wrong, and they don't realize that something as simple as the housing market crashing can make you be homeless. Something as simple as losing your job or getting laid off because of COVID or whatever can end up making you be homeless. So I think that it's almost like, in order for me to understand um gay, lesbian, trans people, it took for me to look into their lifestyles to kind of try to put myself in their shoes so that I can get a better understanding of what it is that they're dealing with, living with, and going through. It's almost like when I was working through my own issues with PTSD, in order for me to not get as anxious around Muslims in full Muslim attire, I had to wrap my face up so that I could know that I wasn't a threat so that other people would feel less threatening. So when it comes to the lack of empathy, it's because people don't understand how somebody can be homeless. People don't understand that they can be put out, or just it could be something that has nothing to do with that person, but more of the situation. I, for one, I sometimes have a hard time understanding how a veteran can be homeless. And just because if you get out and you're honorably discharged, I don't see how you're not getting some type of benefits to try to help you out. Now, that is my lack of understanding because as a veteran, I know how to help you get benefits. But the part that I needed to reconsider is the fact that um truthfully and honestly, everybody doesn't get out the army and or any military branch with an honorable discharge. You can get out other than honorable and it'll not allow you the same type of benefits. You can get out dishonorable and it won't allow you the same type of benefits. So it's a lot of things that go into what makes a person homeless. And until you sit down and have a conversation with homeless people to understand their backstory, it's harder to be sympathetic. It's not just with homelessness, it's with anything. If you've never experienced a troubling parenting relationship, then you won't understand somebody that their parents didn't want them or abandon them or put them through certain type of stuff because you didn't experience that. Only thing you know is my parents love me, they do this, they do that, and because of that, when it's like when I tell people my mama tried to kill me, they're like, "Oh my god, like how? Like what in the world?" Like, but for me, I don't know what it feels like to be properly loved by my mother. So, I can't identify. I mean, I've seen it in other people's relationship, but I can identify with that to the extent. So, like, um, I give you an example. When Ti's niece, or Ti's sister passed, her niece, I mean his niece was on social media, and I remember saying like, she had got sick once, and I was like, man, I don't know what I would do if I was you if my mother passed because I don't have that type of relationship. So I don't know if I'll even like flinch. But if your mother passed and y'all super close, y'all hang out every day, like that would be devastating. And when her mother passed, it was devastating because that type of relationship. But if you don't have an understanding of something outside of your norm, outside of what you've been exposed to, is very, very extremely hard to sympathize with somebody else.
I would definitely kind of empathize with what you're saying there. But Mrs. Scott, how are you doing this evening?
Very good, very good. How is everybody doing? It's good to
Greetings,
be
greetings,
able to
Mr.
join
Scott.
you.
Glad to see
I
you.
I didn't know if I was too toxic, and then might not be. For toxicity, sometimes people, they don't want to, talk to Mr. Scott. But I'm glad, James, that you
Unless you
step up to
talking
the
about the
plate.
rap game, unless you
Well,
unless you
we can get
badgering
to
us
that
about
at some point
the
too.
rap game.
Yeah.
We can get to that
uh,
at some point too, but that's not a priority. Rap game.
but Mr. Scott, we were talking in specific about the New York mayor's remarks that liberal policies have led to an increase in crime. And uh, I've heard this from other mayors around the country. Usually, most of them are south of the Mason Dixon line. But one of the things that I thought that was left out of this statement was that in most cases, the reason why we have these policies was because they were made because of COVID. We were talking about court dockets being overstretched. We were already talking about overcrowding in jail. We were talking about there not being enough police on the street. Uh, there are a lot of things that go into this policy uh, about the current jail system here in California. If you steal less than, I believe it's $1,500, you get a court date. You don't get locked up, or you get a recognizance bond. And this had actually nothing to do with liberal politics. It had more to do with the sensibility of trying to keep contagion down within the prison population, as well as I said, for protection of the court officers. What is your thought about the current homeless problem, and do you think that we can link a direct causation between policies and the high increase in crime?
Well, this blaming liberal policies. I mean, this just becomes a narrative. I mean, these people are all the same thing. I mean, it's like there's a great professor here in the Twin Cities, Dr. Mahmoud El Khati. And Dr. Mahmoud, he's actually written some things in our book. He's endorsed our books. And what he says that beliefs are very powerful. He says there are people who run around believe that they've seen ghosts. They believe in ghosts. They believe it. And so when they say this liberal policies that's the fault, well, they're not being able to really sit down and let's figure out what really is the fault of these things. Why are all these people home? There's never been a homeless situation in the Twin Cities like there is now. And they had a real misguided plan. They built a new Marriott hotel almost in the heart. Well, maybe it's a mile away from where the George Floyd thing happened. This is on Lake Street, which is 30th Street, and George Floyd was on 30th Street, on the same street, Chicago Avenue. Well, what they did was the mayor came up with a plan to put homeless people in this new hotel. And they paid the hotel enough money where they said, well, okay, if you're going to pay us, we'll do it. They trashed that hotel, took the TVs out, took the machines out, took the place is just, after a month, they had to evacuate the hotel. It's a shambles now. But I say that to say they don't know the ideology of this thing. They don't really look at why these people are homeless to me. Here, we have a lot of immigrants that have come in and they have the housing. They can go into Section 8 and they go right into Section 8 and they get it, where we have people that have been waiting for years to get some Section 8 assistance. And it's in COVID, I'm almost leaning toward Dr. Casey on COVID now, because
Told y'all.
James, have you taken a flu shot? Remember all this thing about taking flu shots? You got to take it. Well, why didn't we wear masks then? When the flu shot came out, why didn't we have to wear masks? Because they say you get the flu from somebody else. Well, how do you get COVID? Do you get it from somebody else? Is it like a cancer? Is it like a see? All these things continue to contribute to our.
Mr. Scott, y'all got on me so bad. I'm talking about y'all was on my ass about that damn COVID shot. I'm talking about y'all
still
will not
on you.
let up on me.
I'm still on you. I went and got my last booster. I'm still on
Yeah.
you,
I'm looking for my fourth booster shot. Yeah.
That's why,
I've
y'all
already
will not
got
do
mine.
that.
This is
But
where the divide comes. This is where the divide comes into this stuff. I mean, I've never taken a flu shot. Never. The only reason I've never taken it. Do you take it, Dr. Casey?
Not anymore. I did twice, and I
the
got
flu-
extremely sick following.
But the flu shot
Same thing.
is the flu. They actually
That's
give
what
you the
COVID
flu.
shot is. Jay.
No, it is not, because COVID
Man,
is
you
not.
keep believing that bullshit.
Okay, all right.
It gives you
All right.
COVID.
Okay, all right.
In order for an immunization to work, it has to give you the virus.
There's a difference between a virus and what they call okay.
So you think
COVID.
that the flu immunization is different than the COVID immunization and how immunizations work?
Yes, I do.
Oh shit. Okay, let's just move
well,
on. Next subject, Mr. Scott. Go ahead.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the homeless now.
Well, but it's related to that. It's related to that. The all these homeless people. If there's a COVID,
hold on. Was COVID here in 1968? We had COVID.
It was the flu. It was something else. They gave you something else that they wanted to manipulate you with at that time. Every so often, I don't want to say every 10 years, I don't want to put a date on it, but it's like clockwork. When COVID went away, then it was something else. Then it was Ebola. Then it was swine flu. Then it was the mosquitoes. Then it's always something that induces fear, that pushes you in a direction that they desire for you to go.
In relation to that and the homeless, there's an area in South Minneapolis. Again, all this stuff is right around within a mile from where I live. And you can go down this street and it's nothing but homeless people with tents. Now they've even moved out to the boulevard where they have porta potties and all. You drive past there and the stench comes into your car. You can smell it as you drive through there. Okay. And so if there's a virus, you want to tell me the other people should be dead of the virus. They're not practicing nothing, no mask. They haven't been vaccinated. They haven't done anything.
Now you sound like Herschel Walker. Why do we still have monkeys?
No. I'm just saying we have to look at this thing. Forget Herschel Walker. He's a dummy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He can't even make two words together. But because of the Trump thing. See, that's a whole other thing, this Trump thing. This is a thing that has...
Back on the homeless now. Stay on the homeless.
Okay, I'm going to stay on the homeless, but that has revived the Confederacy thing that contributes to this thing too. See, they haven't gone away either. But in regards to the homeless, boy, there's mental health issues. When I got out of grad school, I worked for the state rehabilitation agency, and they had a lot of hospitals here for people that had mentally challenged things. They had Anoka Hospital. They had them all over the counties, had these hospitals, and then they closed them. So all these people that need that type of treatment, I actually had an uncle, World War II. They said he had shell shock. That's what they said about him. And one day he comes home And my grandfather said they done found Uncle Claude in South Dakota. He thought he was going back home, and he ended up in South Dakota, and they had to go get him. And he ended up in a veterans hospital in St. Cloud for the rest of his life. But see, they don't have those resources anymore. See, they decided they don't want to do that, and they throw these people out on the street, and this is what happens. This is this is contributing to the homeless problem that we have in this country. Look at Los Angeles, right downtown area. You wouldn't believe what people send me videos of homeless.
I I've been in LA, and that's another thing that we were talking about because they did the same thing in LA before the Super Bowl that they do here in San Diego. Now that the Padres are playing downtown, we moved the homeless. Talking about New York, they have moved the homeless, once again. And okay, as you say, there's a stench, there's all these different problems. But if you're going to move those people, or if you're going to break up their camps, Mr. Scott, shouldn't you have somewhere for them to go? The thing, and I said this earlier before you and Miss Sims came on the show. It took me about 3.5, close to 4 years to clean up my neighborhood, to get the homeless out, to make sure that people had pride in the alley and in the yards. When you run these people out from wherever they are now, I don't want them coming back up in my neighborhood. So if you don't have somewhere to place them, where are you going to put them? Are you going to do you want them out in front of your house, Mr. Scott?
Well, they're within walking distance, damn near to my house. Matter of fact, they had been at a park just 3-4 blocks away, King Park. They had been homeless, but they broke up that camp, and it just seems like they don't have an answer for this. I mean, the economy, the housing prices, all of these things continue to just browbeat people into I mean, even people working, two people that are trying to start a family now to buy a house, it's almost impossible. They say the housing stock is so low that they put a bid in and there's 10 bids and everybody bids higher. Can't get it. So
Everyone, okay.
where does it end? Where does it end?
Speaking from my experiences in regards to the group, the homeless group in my organization, Micah, we do have someone, a veteran that's working within our group and part of our group that's speaking to veterans and other people regarding COVID, for to get COVID shots, etc., etc. We have hooked up with the county, Hennepin, and even Ramsey, etc., etc., and getting people actually to go into the where the unsheltered and homeless people are regarding getting them COVID shots and information, etc., etc. So the homeless population and the groups that I work with are doing all that we and they can in regards to um, doing the best um, doing the best we can as being their partners and working with them while at the same time, honoring their leadership in providing them in the way that they want to go. But even through all of this, there still are, and I've learned and listened to the homeless population with our groups, with our group and other people groups connected with what we're doing. Um, the unsheltered, like any population of people, there are all not of one accord. I mean, are just their opinions and feelings are just as varied as ours or anybody else's. And so some things I I agree with and will help them and do whatever I can. One is the thing that I had told them that I would never do and support them in is there's a population of people that want to remain out on the street. Uh, that's where they feel comfortable. They say they feel they build relationships, etc., etc. I, as an individual, and my humanity and faith, know that being on the street is not a healthy and positive thing for anybody. So I said I will never support that aspect
But they'd
of
rather
for
be
the
on the
group.
streets than in
Some
a
of them,
facility where there's rules. They'd rather be on the street where they
Right.
can do what they want to do.
I just said that population of people, their opinions and feelings are just as varied as unsheltered persons, and you run into it and listen to that, and where
And
they're
see,
coming from, etc., etc.
and Dr. Casey hit upon a very good point when she's talking about how the homeless also separate themselves into certain groups because when I was a young man, as I have said many times, I ran away from home. I didn't consider myself homeless. I was a runaway. And I hung with other runaways. We didn't consider ourselves homeless. We didn't consider ourselves a gang. We just happened to be a bunch of teenagers that had ran away from home. And I found the same circumstance when I moved out here in 2003. There was a large group of young people out here, just like there were other women and families that were out here that were runaways from other states, and they didn't consider themselves homeless. They considered themselves runaways, and therefore they didn't want to conform to those same type of rules or situations that you had to conform to get in a shelter or to further your education. They, for want of another word, they formed into their own little gang. And that's where you have, because you have so much distrust within the system, a lot of these people do not want to be involved
Mhm.
within the system.
I agree with.
Well, wait. So earlier, Mr. Scott was talking about the facilities and how a lot of us of those facilities are being shut down or are no longer in existence. But what was going on inside of those facilities wasn't always humane towards the people that was in those facilities. You got to remember that they were sending people there because they didn't want to deal with
Agree.
people with mental health issues.
Agree.
It was not, I am sending you here for you to get help. It's sending you here so nobody has to deal with you. And it goes back to what I was saying before you joined on today, Mr. Scott, is that a lot of these mental health issues are not necessarily mental health issues, but they're spiritual battles that the medical field isn't equipped to address because they don't believe in the spirituality and the soul the way that it literally exists in this world. So when you start talking about putting people in mental health facilities where they can be raped, where they can be mistreated, I mean, shit, we got that problem with nursing homes and older people being in nursing homes and being mistreated. So just imagine when you put somebody in a mental facility where they're taking medicines all day. That means that they are being forced to stifle their reality. That means that they are not being allowed to deal with whatever the issue is, to address it, to relieve it, to heal it, to whatever it is that they're experiencing. And a lot of that goes back to because mental health back then was a way to punish people. If I say that you had a mental health problem, then I'm gonna send you away. They didn't address the issues. They were literally basically condemning people because they were not on the status of what was considered normal. But for black Americans especially, what's normal for a black person is not what's normal for a white person. That's why they use black people as test dummies and lab rats to figure out how to handle other people. But you got to remember, They don't think we feel pain. They don't think we have a sense of fear. They don't think that we are human. So for you to even when you talk about your uncle being
Three
sent to a,
fifths, three fifths, three
I
fifths.
mean, they ain't looking for you to have regular human emotions. They think that you're a superhero. They think you a super nigga. You can run fast, you can jump fast, you can fight, you're stronger than anybody else. So they handle you like that. And as long as they're trying to contain what they perceive as animals, then that's where the kind of, I mean, and it wasn't just black people in mental health facilities, but I'm sure that they was probably outnumbered in everybody else because they're normal. It's like statistics. Most statistics is not really a real good statistic because it's not taking account of the people that actually is affected. It's taking account of their controlled number of the controlled people that they decided to ask at that time or that decided to participate. And then they're basing everybody's normalcy off of this 2000 group, 2000 people that may or may not be anything like me, may or may not have come from the same places that I came from. Definitely don't have the same target on your back as other people, non-black people. So when you talk about mental health and you throw that in there, it's so much that goes in that. And the main reason why so much is because the medical field and science does not recognize spirituality the way that they should. So things that's of a spiritual nature, instead of trying to understand the spiritual aspect of life, they will tell you that you're crazy. Something is wrong with you. You cannot
But
be
there's no
seeing something that's
question.
not really there.
But there's no question that people that need services, that need support, if you have no way of taking care of yourself, you have no way of functioning in this society, to just send them out there on their own, this is what contributes to homelessness. I mean, you really have to have some type of employment. You have to have some type of, and I mean,
See, but all of
whatever
those
level it
things are
is,
structured things that we've been told we're supposed to
well,
have. God did not create us to come down here and work for
I
nobody and
understand
get
that.
employment
But
and be
in this
stressed
world
out
now,
to foster somebody else's economic success and financial growth. That's not what we're here for. That is something that man made. Money is something man made. If we all did what was good or what we were good at, then it would be more of a bartering. If
but you
you need
can't roll
something that
back
I
that
do,
clock now. You can't roll
you
back that
can.
clock now.
It's just gonna take a lot more work. You can't roll back
You
the
know,
clock of what the mental health industry was supposed to be, what it could have been, and what it has become. Because right now it's just a pill mill. Every
yeah, it's
every
just drugs.
mental health and even physical health is mostly pill mill. They want to get you in, they want to diagnose you with something, they're gonna give you some medicine that's gonna give you something else, it's gonna make you need more medicine, it's gonna give you something else, it's gonna make you need more medicine. And it's a cycle of taking medicine that's probably going to give you a side effect that you're going to need another medicine, so that money keep rolling. They're not trying to heal you, because if you heal, you ain't paying. If you're
But to
paying, you
circle
ain't
back,
healed.
to the homelessness part of this, I mean, for example, I have a consulting thing where I represent employers all over the country on unemployment matters. Okay. And this COVID has been a boon to my business because I do the American Red Cross, I do hospitals, and these people will not take the vaccine. They won't take it. And they tell them that, look, I had one the other day where they will give you an exemption, a religious exemption. They will give you other types of exemptions for health, for whatever. This person got the exemption for religious purposes, but they required you to still be tested. They required you to still, and they refused to do it. So they get fired. And the word is now that if you don't want to do that, you can get unemployment. That you can get unemployment. So I get 4 or 5 of these things every day and turn down 4 or 5 of these things.
Yeah, because you can't get unemployment here in California. I don't know about some of those other cities.
Yeah,
Maybe,
I don't think.
maybe that's one of those liberal policies
Yeah,
that they
because
have.
they don't do that in
I-
Georgia
But
either.
I'm just
but
saying, it doesn't.
but
No, I mean, it doesn't matter what happens in the cases to me. I don't care. I hope the people do get it. if that's what they apply for, and I think they should. It's not up to me. I'm not the judge, but I'm just saying that there are people, they are applying for unemployment. They get fired because they will not take the vaccine, or they won't even be tested.
Well, but
They've been given a reprieve, but they still have to be tested for the virus, and they won't do it.
but that's the right of private industry. I do. If I say I'm going to open up a store and I'm not going to hire you because that's my right as an employer. And if you don't want to comply with that, then you go somewhere else and get you another job. Real simple.
No,
There's
it's
nothing out
not.
there. There's not.
I mean,
Yes, it is.
I have
Yes,
hundreds of people
yes, it
sitting
is.
over here right now.
Mr. Scott, if I jump out of an airplane without having a parachute on my back, I'm gonna bust my ass. I don't care what. You can figure out any kind of way you want. Now, the job requires that I put that parachute on my back. If I don't put it on there, there's consequences. If I go to your house and say, or your employer and say, I want a job, the employer says, you got to be tested. I say, I don't want to be tested. Then evidently, I don't want to work for that company. Very
Okay.
simple. Simple as
And,
that.
and that's
Okay.
what the employer said, but they can still apply for
Well,
unemployment. And when they're turned down, they can appeal it. And then they call me.
I can apply. I can apply for another name. I can apply to be white. It doesn't
And
mean that,
some of these
they're
people
going to
win.
rule for me.
James, some of
Oh,
these
yeah,
people win. Some of these people win. They
They
say
should
that
have
the
hey,
a right to
employer,
win.
yeah,
They should
yeah.
have a right to refuse that treatment. If they
yeah,
don't
some
agree
of
with the
these
They
people
treatment, they
they
should
win.
have a
do
right
have a
to
right to
refuse it, and they
refuse
should
it.
win.
They do have
Some
a
of the
right to
people
refuse
win.
it. There are consequences. They do have a right. I'm not saying that, but anyway,
Yeah.
uh, Miss Casey, Dr. Casey, something very interesting happened on the way to the show tonight, and I know that you you love talking about Florida and their teaching and books and whatnot, but they banned 54 math books because of possible, not proven, because of possible
They don't
links
want
to
to feel that.
CRT.
They don't want to feel that white guilt. It is something. It's kind of crazy, honestly, because uh, when we learn history in schools, it is conditioning us. It is teaching us with conditioning of what the history has been. And what we learn about Black people in school primarily is slavery, some inventions here and there, but nowhere near what we've really invented or put into the world. Um, so they are running from the reality of their truth. They can't run from it for long. What they realize is that with the internet, they can't even hide from it. But if you think about how I can't remember which um the dang defense no, it was the education secretary, what last one that had her daughter was all out like nine with it. I don't remember their names, but the daughter of the education person was against it. She was speaking out. They are afraid that their children are going to turn against them, if you ask me. They're afraid that once these truths come out, I seen a meme the other day. They're afraid that they're going to be outed as being the people that was against Ruby Bridges going to school. They're going to be outed as all of these things that make them the barbarians that they are in reality. And instead of Black people being viewed as barbarians, the truth will come out. Now, eventually, the truth is going to have to come out because the truth is going to set us free. But it's the same way with all of these laws. If you deflect and make it be like, well, no, we don't want this to be talked about. They don't want it to be talked about because for so long we've been conditioned to think that the white people was the savior of the world, and they've just been doing all of these good things, and they just didn't came and they didn't save the Black people, and they didn't brought them from Africa and saved the Black people. They ain't telling you that they didn't told these indigenous people that they was from Africa, and then none of them was from Africa, and they was made slaves. They ain't telling you that part. They're only telling you that they brought slaves over. This is why when Miss Sims talk about all these slaves from Africa, matter of fact, I just seen a picture, about 4 or 5 pictures of people coming from boats into America, it was no black people on none of them pictures of none of them boats that these people was coming on. But the real point is that they've made you and us believe for so long that every single black person in America came from Africa and that we were always all slaves and that we didn't come from nothing, to where if they really begin to unfold the truth, then you will see that black people were some of the richest people. They've always been about it. They've always been able to get money and hustlers. But the moment that we come up, white people take us down. They don't want us to come up because, again, if we get the knowledge of who we are in this earth, in this country, on this land, and as indigenous people, Moors, whatever you want to call it, then it will destroy what they've established thus far, because everything that they've established is based on white lies. Now, we were told back then that white lies were little fibs, but white lies is some bold damn lies that have kept us stifled for a very, very, very long time. The things that's hurting us now is not black on black crime that really don't exist. It's just crime, or anything like that. The thing that's hurting us most is the lack of knowledge. This is what the Bible said. I mean, we don't really fool with the Bible, but the Bible say lack of knowledge is the problem. But the lack of knowledge is not knowing our history, not knowing our culture, not knowing what that indigenous people was even here, that Moorish people was here, that this land was ran by people before the white Europeans got here. And if we knew that, it would change the way that we receive each other, and it would change the way we look at ourselves, because we wouldn't see ourselves as needing to be saved, or as the bottom of the scum of the earth. You know what I'm saying? You will realize that dark is not bad, because they make everything that's dark seem bad. Dark angels, dark magic. You know what I'm saying? Everything that's dark, they give a negative undertone, so that we perceive ourselves negatively. If they really allowed the truth to come out, white people wouldn't be as confident, and their power structure would not be as strong, in my opinion.
I need to
Uh,
interject here. When I was speaking of slaves in Africa, and when Dr. Casey pointed out my wording, I did correct myself, and she was correct. And I'm glad she didn't pointing out how I was wording things. And I corrected in saying, I meant any place on this world
But it's not
that
just
that
but
you.
but
does
but Miss Sims,
that enslaves people, not just Africa or the continent of Africa. There's slavery still going on in some places, as quiet as people try
but Miss,
to
but Miss,
keep
but Miss,
it.
Miss Sims is 2022, and you don't think that you can be pulled over for having a joint in your car. So, uh, Brother Williams,
Stop
bro, bro,
wasting your mind. I keep telling you, James, you're too old for that. Too old for
the the the
like I said, Miss Sims,
wasting your
I
brain.
like I said,
wasting,
Miss Sims,
what is waste? I'm confused. What's wasting it? What he wait? How he's wasting his brain? Because he is the weed. Because you know that's
No,
cancer healing right there, right? You know how many benefits.
his projected on how he sees me in regards to what the comment and joke we made a while back.
I'm saying, no, how the Minneapolis police is gonna perceive you if you're not going 5 miles over the speed limit, you're only going three.
Probably
But
the same way as any other place does.
right, precisely what I'm trying to say,
I haven't
brother,
said anything opposite of that, James. That's what I mean. Stop. Brain
brother.
is a way. It's still a terrible thing to waste, James.
Brother Williams, glad to have you on tonight, and maybe you can shed some light on this, because I mean I'm still looking for that math book. Massa had got $5,000. He's going to the slave market. How many niggas can he? I mean, uh, I'm trying to figure out this, how math figures into CRT.
No, I don't have an answer for that one, James. I mean, we talking about making the illogical logical. In this crazy world with linear thinking the way it is, people are warping and make anything happen and be possible. So
Mr. Scott, what do you think about that? 54 math books that are banned because they have
Yeah,
they they hint of CRT, not teach
right.
it. They hint of CRT.
Yeah.
Like I said, what's a hint? Two cups of
Well,
coffee to
yeah.
one tablespoon of cream. I mean,
It's in anything that basically alludes toward the trail of racism,
Truth.
like Dr. Casey was saying, anything that can open up the discussion
White
Just
of
supremacy.
racism.
because once the lights come on, once you get like, it's almost like when you start researching religion outside of the Bible, the minute that you really do some research and start like studying for real and start looking at history, and this is the reason why in most religions they tell you do not look at anything other than, if you look at something other than the Bible, you're going to hell. Because the moment that you begin to just spark, what Tupac say, he ain't there to change the generation, save the generation. He just to spark that brain that's gonna change. If you give just a hint, just a little bit, all you need is an inch for somebody else's mind. Because I can just think about something, and once I research it, if it takes me down the rabbit hole, I'm going. I'm in. I'm gone. I'm in the rabbit hole, and I'm gonna stay there until I find whatever it is. So the goal is to prevent you from going even close to the rabbit hole. Don't even. We gonna put you. You know how they set up traps in the woods. You put the trap down and then you cover it up. This is what they like. Oh no! You can't see this, because if you see this,
You
the cat's out the bag.
put a blanket over a hole. Put a blanket over a hole
Mhm,
and you walk
mhm,
into it.
mhm, mhm. And that's what it is, the whole of truth.
But
Well, personally,
but you know
from my
what Dr.
experience,
Casey is saying.
my understanding and listening, I have not heard a definition of what critical race theory is. I've heard different variations of what people say and feel, but
Well, I
I
can give
haven't
you
heard.
my thoughts. I
But
can give
but
you my
but
thoughts.
yeah, and it will vary. So to me, here again, it's taking helping facilitate whoever is pushing that. It's taking your eye off the prize. It's a diversion, and the more we can get people to think about it and considering, because it seems to be coming from in here, and what I've heard, know of a lot of the political arena and people that are connected with politics. So to me, here again, if whatever population that is can push it on and push that out and keep and start people's thinking and especially their extreme behaviors that's connected with this, then they're operating under some and pulling people somehow under the control and manipulating them and in a direction like social engineering people to believe and go and think in a direction that they want them to go in for their benefit. So, and a theory is is not proven; it's still a theory. And looking at the definition of theory, so it's a dangerous game out there. I certainly agree. Promoting and keep pushing this critical the terminology and whatever people are describing or defining critical race theory, because as James had said, it can be attached to any asinine type thinking.
right. But the actual critical race theory itself is a law term. It comes from uh, the injustice uh, of social justice, for want of a lack of a better term. Uh, and But there are certain, first of all, as I've said before, and as most people know, critical critical race theory is not something that is taught in public schools. It's not something that you even run into, except now that it's become a popular term.
Mhm.
But it was something that you had never ran into unless you were going to be a member of the bar. You studied cases according to critical race theory.
I mean, in some southern places, I know in Atlanta they do talk a lot about race and civil rights and stuff like that. But it is not widespread that you hear about the things the way you do in a place like Atlanta where civil rights was,
But
started and carried out here.
critical race theory and and the civil rights movement had nothing to do with each other. They
Listen to
have
what I
just
just said.
no, no. I know what you're saying, but I'm saying for the general audience that critical race theory has nothing to do with public education. It has nothing, well, higher education, but it has nothing to do actually with your children,
Well,
Well,
unless
people
the,
up
it.
here, people that want to push that, and I have heard it that there are some people that's pushing it into the education system in
it
various
should be pushed into
aspects
the
of
education.
up here, and things like that. But here again, if you believe in what James is describing and how it comes about, uh, it's it's one sided. It's people. I think people acting out of fear and competition, and what I've heard, and my experience and hearing it being bandied about here and around within my range and scope, uh, because the main thing that it's being used, and if it can be used in the political, if it gains real big momentum in the political aspects of things, you're going to see it more and more out in the political arena in terms of people, candidates having that as part of their platform, et cetera, which is another way of strategy of getting power and control. So
It's all about
it's
hiding the
dangerous
truth.
in that people are believing
It's
in that.
it's all about trying to hide the truth. I mean, there's a man that says the black people here, foundational Americans. In other words, we were here when this country was started. We were here at the beginning and before. And so what it tries to do is it tries to not acknowledge that. It tries to acknowledge that we were here at the beginning of this. Now, all the people that have come in after, all the people, all the immigrants and all this, okay, that's fine. But we were here first. We were here
They
at
don't
the
want people to know
beginning.
that.
They were here at the beginning of this country. I mean, we're the, and so this whole thing can be totally debunked because we were here at the beginning of this country. We
And
are
if what
That,
foundational
that's
if
that's
what
Americans
you're
they don't
if
want
what
people
you're
to
if
know.
what you're
We're on
saying,
the same
Mr. Scott,
footing
if
as
what you're
you.
saying,
Hold on, Miss Sims. Let him
okay,
finish.
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Mr. Scott.
We are foundational Americans as much as anyone here. We were at the beginning of this country, and we have our foothold here. But that all these things are to deny that, to change that narrative, to
Mhm,
change that story, to do things
mhm.
with the police. And I have all kind of a bone to pick with Mr. War because last week when we were talking about a mayor and saying that the police were almost in the right. Look, he's the wrong person. He doesn't have no warrant. He's a licensed gun holder. And so he deserves to die right on the spot there.
No, no,
No,
no. That's not what I'm saying.
well, well, we have to
What
change those narratives.
What, Mr. Scott? What, brother? And I'm sure I'm not. I mean, Brother Williams can speak for himself, but what Brother Williams was speaking to was how SWAT teams are trained.
trained? Yeah.
just like
Mhm.
just like any other elite force, whether it be Navy SEALs, whether it be Delta Force, you are
And if he was a
trained
white
to
man, would
handle.
it be the same thing? If he was a white man, would it be the same thing?
No,
That's
it
Sometimes
my
white
wouldn't.
people
question.
get killed.
Every now and
Sometimes
then it wouldn't. I mean, y'all look at the one
not
that just
100%
happened
of the
on
time.
April the 4th with Patrick. Y'all familiar with that in the Grand Rapids? Did y'all see that one?
Right,
Yeah,
You
right.
you, you
yeah,
got some
yeah.
discussion on that, Anthony? Okay,
Yeah,
and now like the police department don't want to release the name of the officer that was involved. So I
yeah.
got plenty to pick apart on that one. And,
But
and
that was
and
not a
just like
SWAT. That wasn't a SWAT
no,
team.
no, that wasn't SWAT. What you had was what appeared to me, and I could be wrong. I don't have all the information, obviously, but it appeared to be a rookie cop that did not know how to properly seduce somebody and got frustrated and shot him in the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
A
See,
straight
but
up murder.
a lot of these officers, even if they're not SWAT, they're still trained kind of the same. The SWAT training, that the only difference between the SWAT training is raid type of training to go
But
in
see,
and
that goes
pursue
back to
people.
a
Well,
fear of just
they're
say that a
trained.
black
They're trained to
man.
kill. They're trained to shoot to
Yeah,
kill. They're not
every
trained.
every
They're not
police
trained
officer,
to hurt. It's trained to kill. They're not trained to
every
hurt you.
police
They're
officer
trained to
is
kill you.
trained to kill. What the baby did the last week when he shot the guy in the leg that came on his property, he did a better job at what he said, neutralizing the the suspect than most police officers do. But police
Yeah,
are not trained to neutralize; they're trained to eliminate.
yeah,
You have never seen a target, at least I haven't, that had arms and legs on it. It's
Uh-uh.
usually center
right.
mass or head.
Mm-hmm.
There you
Even
go.
even in moving targets, it's hard to hit a moving target, but they train you to to shoot to kill. They're not training you to shoot to injure. We don't care. We not training nobody to shoot in the leg.
No.
To me, if
But I
you're
mean,
trained to
in the Amir situation,
if you're trained to kill, then
he's not the person.
you're going to be
He's not the
eventually
subject.
you're going to kill somebody. And
Mr.
I
Scott,
think that training, in addition to the high comfort level of that you're going to get away with it,
and that has nothing to do.
exists
The going to get away with it
exists.
part is not as much of a thing as the
But
fact
I'm
that.
focusing on just on the Amir situation where he's not the subject.
But
He
did you
had
see the
no
lady
criminal
in
record.
Georgia?
He had
Did you
nothing.
see the lady in Georgia that got pulled over coming out the store? They was looking for a whole totally different person. Didn't look nothing like this little short black
That,
lady that was heavyweight. They was looking for somebody totally different. It is several cases and instances where they're looking for somebody completely opposite, and then they paint that person to be whoever it is they want to be because they need that quota to be met. And that's why I am totally against the quota based policing, because when you're meeting
Yep,
quotas, when you got to do it because you're needing to meet a
yep,
quota, you will arrest and or shoot whoever is going to get you that number, whether it is pulling somebody over. Somebody could be doing 3 miles over, 5 miles over. If you think that you might catch a lick, for a police officer, catching a lick would be finding somebody with
I,
drugs, guns, or something else.
I've had a law enforcement admit that they had those unwritten quotas. And see
I don't
again,
even
like
think
let
they
me go back
unwritten
to
because they get bonuses. They
yeah.
get
Well, I'm
incentives.
just saying, as far as the public's concerned, Anthony, kind of going back to what I was getting at last week, and the
Yeah.
same with this Patrick case. The deal is the police department, and y'all can attest to this, that when you just say a person that serves in the military, in combat, where do you put those skills in the civilian sector when you get out? Where can you get a job training? I mean, when what you learn how to do is kill people in the civilian world.
You can't.
Law enforcement.
That's the only place.
That's it. That's the only place that you
And
can do
it,
that. Law
in a
enforcement or
short
security.
time, and they're gonna send you right out there with just the minimum 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever the little time is. It ain't a lot to learn how to kill somebody, and then go out there and be told that not only will your life possibly be taken every single day, you're living with PTSD now because
Yep.
every day you go to work, you're in fear that something.
but
I
And
use this
and, and you
example
but for
view the
these
before.
community.
police to continue to say, "I feared for my life with black people,"
That
to
is
me,
that is the legal
that's a
thing they tell
mental
them to say.
that's a
Eh,
mental
That's
thing
what they're
that says
told to
that
say.
in their mind, they know what they've done to black people. They know,
that
and so
has
they're
nothing to
like,
do with that.
I believe in their minds, they actually believe. Okay, well,
The reason why I say no is because it's like, let's use Will Smith as an example. When Will Smith slapped that man, if Will Smith really wanted to do it and he been planning on slapping that for a long time, then guess what? His publicist gonna tell him, "Hey, this is what I need you to say. I need you to release this statement. This statement needs to say this, 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 and this." It don't matter what Will Smith actually feel like because guess what? His job is to hire somebody that's gonna write his statement. It's no different than a speech writer for the president or anybody else. They have people to tell them when you go in front of here, this is what you have to say. It don't matter if they feel like that. They might not feel like that. They may feel remorse. They may. It's just like when the doctors at the hospital, if they do something wrong, they are not allowed to
Yep.
say, "I did something wrong. I apologize." I mean, they can, but the risk of them saying that they did something wrong and they're apologizing is what's going to get them convicted of whatever it is that you go after once they tell you they did something wrong. That's why they don't do it. And in some states, I want to say here in Georgia, if not here in Georgia, and definitely in some other states, even if they apologize for doing something wrong and messing up, they've made it to where they can't use that against them because they're just doing their job. It is a matter of control,
In
perception,
conditioning.
and
I
all
would
of those
say
things.
it's
Mhm.
conditioning, Anthony. All we're getting at, we're not justifying it. We're just
Mm-mm.
trying to tell you it's the culture, and
Mhm.
and this is why I also go back to talking about instead of us chanting defund the police, it should be about demilitarizing the police
Mhm.
because the people that you are attracting are automatically going to see the environment in which they operate as a war zone, and
Mhm.
the people in that war zone are enemy combatants, and that's the
Mhm.
bottom line. So if
That's the way
that
they're
is
trained.
that's the way they train. That's the way they condition. So if I see things that way, how do you expect to have a different type of result?
Now,
And
now
number two,
add in there the fact that a lot of people that are applying because they probably was bullied, they probably was picked on,
exactly.
they got some
Those are the
underlying
non-military. Yeah,
issues
the
that
non-military ones are like that. So it's like
they
it's
have
bad on
those.
both sides. Bad on
Mhm.
both sides.
Mhm. Because those underlying insecurities,
Yep.
they come out during those stops like that where somebody feels he was nowhere near overpowered. This man was on, but if you feel mentally overpowered, then guess what? Your result is going to be. It's just like if you arguing with somebody, and even if you're not being threatened, if they feel threatened mentally, some people will swing just off of the mental threat
Well,
that
well,
is combative.
Well, going into that Patrick case, looking at the video footage, the officer he executed everything wrongly. For one, anytime you're gonna pull a taser or a weapon, you do not get close to the person. You step back so that you have a distance between yourself and them. So he didn't execute any of his training properly. And so to me, that leans obviously to where the lawsuit can come in. But now let me go into one thing that I have to say that I say all the time that I feel like the public needs to know. If you are being arrested, it's only gonna go down two, 3 ways. One, you go to jail. Two, you get killed. Three, you kill the cop and then go to jail. When
Mhm.
you are being arrested, it just does not make any sense whatsoever to fight and put up resistance,
Sure, even
especially
if you're
Right.
not
in a
fighting.
situation like that. And mind you, the bystanders, if you look at the video, the bystanders were damn near cheering him on and instigating the situation of escalating it. And now you got this rookie cop or this cop that really don't know how to execute his stuff properly, scared of everything that's going on,
Mhm.
frustrated, and then shot him in the back of the head. Execution.
And I
It
think
created a cocktail.
it takes a while for a person to get comfortable in a position of authority, of power, and you have people's lives in your hand. Literally, you go to work and you can say, "Today, I'm going to shoot somebody," and you just waiting for the opportunity for it to happen. So when you talk about that part of it, they need to do mental evaluations before they hire police officers because a person that has been struggling their whole life with depression or insecurities and now that they're able to pass an exam and become a police officer, they're going to be a ticking time bomb. A lot of these people are ticking time bombs for whatever reason, and there is not enough evaluation on top of not enough training in order for these people because people need to they need to be retrained in social affairs. It needs to be some psychology training going on within the police training, because you need to understand who you're dealing with. You can't treat everybody the same. But it's kind of like what we were talking about the lack of compassion and empathy for homeless people. If you look at everybody as a criminal just because you're called in, then you're already at a disadvantage. The people are at a disadvantage because you're
Right.
already going in. I'm dealing with some criminals. They gonna do something wrong, and if I need to, I can shoot them.
The
That
enemy
that's just a,
combatant.
that's a recipe
But,
for
but now the
disaster.
African brother in Grand Rapids, did Brother Ward, did you watch some of the film of that?
Yeah, yeah. He was they from Congo. Yes, I did.
Yeah, from the
I watched it.
Congo. And
Yeah.
he ran. He turned around and I mean, it was just a traffic stop. Now I'm wondering what
That's why I say
brought
you
that
should not
on when
resist
this.
arrest. That's why I say you should not resist arrest. That's the part that always frustrates me, because I look at somebody that's about to die, somebody that did die, that did not have to lose their life simply because they thought they were going to get away.
Two things.
You know.
First, Mr. Scott, in all fairness, last week when Mr. Williams was describing how the SWAT team um, activated itself and were trained, I did not hear what he was saying the same way you did. I didn't. Number two, up here, when they went about, whoever pushed it was able to push the defund the police message. The only way I can think of they went that route or even used that phrase is because a lot of times when you want to take power away from somebody or an organization, you cut off the money and they will change their behavior. But I think in this aspect of defund the police, they weren't thinking it through to the fullest aspect and considering all the whole picture of that. And I think a lot of people realized that and voted against that. But I think it was put out there because a lot of times the way you take away power or deal with power is look at the money trail and take it away. And that would not have happened even if the people
Well,
police were defunded, etc., etc.
Miss Sims, let me ask you this then. You and Mr. Scott have both acknowledged that you have a homeless problem in your area. So why did the budget take $6 million away from programs that would help the homeless and help educate the homeless? If you really want to help solve the problem, why would you defund that problem and all of a sudden you want to fund the police?
From my aspect, it all
Either
has to
one is
do
fine.
from all bottom. We should go to the beginning line. It all goes back to who, as a society, we vote for and put in office in regards to where they're coming from, what they believe in, for stuff like that to make its way to the power level, and people actually go for it or can put stuff like that agenda forward that's self-serving to a certain people and certain populations. And I was reminded of this a couple weeks back on the Don Allen show, our Black News, when they were interviewing one of the aspects for the Infant County Sheriff up here, and they had the white fellow, I forget his name, and Don knew him, and he had done certain social things or whatever that Don seemed to like. It occurred to me, listen, um, when you vote for someone for the wrong reasons and they get it, you got to remember that you may vote for them for whatever reason you like them or they're your brother, but when you vote for a person that shouldn't be in, you're not just voting for that individual and where he comes from. You're voting for a whole party and their agenda. And when that person gets elected to office, even if he feels the party is wrong every which way but up, it takes very few people will go against the party agenda. So you just don't vote a person in office. You vote that person's entire uh, party in and all that they stand for and want to advance. So you have to really think about people, even if they are your friend or your mama or your daddy or even or Dr. Casey or Anthony Scott or Robert Williams or for certainly James King. You think about the whole aspect.
Well, let me add to this real quick because I think we have to think deeper than that because I feel like the whole thing about just simply looking at it as a voting perspective is what turned a lot of black people off. We have to recognize that this institution itself, let's go back to what we dabbled in when we talk about critical race theory. This institution itself, whether we talk about the infrastructure or the institution, it is all compiled based upon racism and white supremacy, which the founding of the United States and the way the United States established itself is based off corporations and capitalist greed. The military and the police department, both systems are utilizing corporate structures which have you setting your bar every year to be higher and higher because the incentives is to constantly make profit and grow your bottom line. So when you have a enforcement department, a military and a police department who every year has to increase its budget so that it operates the same way as any other corporate entity where you have to grow your budget, how can that possibly lend in favor of the community? It can't.
I just can I interject that the United States of America is a business entity. It is
Yes.
not anything other than a business entity with business structure. Okay, that's all.
And
And so
on
from
all,
that,
and on, I totally agree with what Mr. Williams has said. But on top of all that he's saying, and what's controlling that is the political arena. You can't get away from that because this country even says and swears allegiance to a republic. This country is a republic. And if
well,
you look up the word
what I get
republic,
it, but what I'm saying is not just about voting for somebody, but we have to go back to the concept of actually putting people in office that are going to make a difference.
yeah,
I even go as
yeah,
far as saying as black people, we need to literally have our own political structure.
yeah,
Because if you are only dealing with Democrat, Republic, you're dealing with levels of minor reform
yeah,
of the
yeah,
entire system.
yeah,
But
And
yeah,
what is going to change? Nothing is really going to change from that standpoint because you still feeding the same beast. You still
mhm.
feeding the same monster. So
and
when
a,
you're gonna have highs and lows, but you are not eradicating the problem. This goes back to some of what we did with in the Panther Party, where we talk about coping and denial. Those specific mechanisms are what we deal with. Civil rights from that standpoint is basically a coping mechanism.
mhm.
It's not meant to solve the problem. It's simply meant for you to find ways to address and deal with the problem or cope with the problem. So we need to get past coping as black people. Why is it that we always coping with something? We should not be having to cope with it. And so the aspects of critical race theory was opening up the conversation, at least from the standpoint of recognizing that racial superiority is an institution and an infrastructure in which this country is operating. And if you want to make change, then you have to make change at that level. And that also means that we have to be involved from the position of doing more than just voting. That's all I'm saying. We literally need to be raising our people to take a stand and raising
right.
our people
I
to make
agree.
direct change, not
I
just
totally
voting for the
agree.
lesser of two evils, because
See,
that's what
yeah,
we
but
end up doing.
the Democratic Party does not really help black people. They have
No,
never
neither
really
one.
Neither,
helped black people.
neither party helps black
No,
people.
They
not
taught
Believe
they
at
it or
taught you
all.
not.
crumbs. You get
So
I
crumbs and
think
biscuits.
I think all efforts to establish in here in Minnesota a third party it gets a little bit. It doesn't go anywhere, mainly because
They're not designed to
the
help
other two
nobody.
parties do everything they can to not allow that party, the third party, whatever it may be, to exist. And usually, a third party up here is usually just one focus. Focus is just on one effort that is coming out of their self interest as organizing themselves. So right away you got two things that are holding a third party. And even I've even this last week I even thought about how can we get a third party going here and here, especially after I listened to our news and hear how Mr. Scott is in there, holding his own against the powers that be, and that those people and host how that show is going. I
A third
can't
party
commend
is
you,
not
Mr.
going to help
Scott.
if they could take on the same type of
I agree. I agree.
ideals
I
and
agree. And that's a
mindset
given
and
for
narrative.
me. For me, yeah. They can't be the same. And that's what third parties claim to be. Well, we're different from these other two. But
Yeah, but
they
that's
don't get
just like
anywhere.
when you talk about Red Cross and Salvation Army and all these organizations that get all this money and don't really do all of the work that they're getting the money for. It's the same thing. These all of these organizations function the same way. They don't want people to see it. They hope that you miss this portion of what actually happens, and they want to feed you what they want you to believe happens. This is just like the United States. They want you to believe that they're doing what's in the best interest of whatever it is that they're saying they represent. But the actions and the dollars and all of that, it never adds up to what it's supposed to be.
Well, what
I
I'm
Well,
get it.
referencing, people, is that us as black people, we need to be consolidating our power. That's all I'm saying. The bottom line is, if we expect things to change as it applies to racism, racism is going to operate, and I say this all the time. Only power respects power. If we don't come to the table with any power, then there's not going to be any changes. We're going to get these breadcrumbs and biscuits and gravy constantly thrown at us, and then you're gonna get
And
people that
stuff that
continue
don't
to
even
sell
make a
out,
difference. They gonna keep giving you things that don't change nothing.
that
They
don't
just
change
they
nothing.
just, pat you on the back, they give you a little treat, a little snack, and send you on your way. We're gonna keep doing this the same way because all we have to do is pacify you.
I
And
yeah.
when it
I
comes
agree
to
with what
black
Mr. Williams.
organizationalism, it's hard to be organized in black because one, we can't get on the same page to even get the same ideals, to even, figure out what is it that we really want. And I've said this
But
before, I
see, why
believe
can't
on this.
we? Why can't we? I mean, why do
That's
we
the
have to
only
be
answer, though.
resigned that we
Don't
can't do it?
The only answer
But
is for us to get on the same page and
I
and, and
agree. I
consolidate our
agree
and
with
power.
then
what
I
you
get
I
look
that
at
it's
agree with
hard, but
what
that's the
Mr.
just
only
the
that's the
Williams
only
is
importance.
real answer.
saying. I
hold
agree
on,
with
hold on,
what
hold
Mr.
on.
Williams is saying because I've evidenced it here in Minneapolis and Minnesota. The black population, and I don't know who's noticing besides me, is slowly diminishing in regards to population and where you see them in jobs, all out. They're slowly diminishing because we're not collecting ourselves in regards to seeing strength in numbers and our power, and we're not doing what can be done. I'm like Mr. Scott. Hey, I'm ready to confront the issue. I'm not
Well,
just gonna
they've closed
give
our
up.
schools. I mean, there's
Yeah,
been a long going thing here. But look at down in Georgia, Herschel Walker, a top candidate to be a senator there, the Republican. I mean, how pathetic is that? He's a top. I mean, listen to him talk.
It's
Listen to this man talk.
you know how pathetic it is, Mr. Scott. It's as pathetic as the state of Minnesota providing $600 million to the Board of Education and then finding out they have $100 million surplus. How does that work?
Well, I haven't heard about that. I haven't heard about that.
You talked about it on your show. You talked about it
They
on
have a
your show, and
$9 billion.
that was one of the reasons for the teacher strike because they found all this money and the teachers wanted to know why.
Yeah, they had a $9 billion surplus. One of my sons is a teacher.
All
He was
right,
on strike.
all right,
He
and
is
you
a
got
teacher in Minneapolis
and you
school.
got a $60 million budget. How does that happen? Unless somebody's
Well,
stealing.
and then they can move. They can do all kinds of things with.
Don't talk about Georgia. Let's talk
I'm
about
going to talk about
Minneapolis.
Georgia. And I'm going to talk about Herschel Walker. I mean, they can do all kind of things with
talk,
these with this
talk,
with these numbers. But
talk about that
if that's
mayor. Talk
real,
about that mayor and that police chief that you guys reelected. Talk about that.
police chief,
I, that's
we
a
don't
that's
elect
a
police chiefs. We don't
The
elect
the, the,
police
the,
chiefs.
the, the woman that was just appointed after the other one had to step
The
down.
mayor appointed the mayor appointed this woman. She's not
And,
going to be
and
there. It's just, I mean,
but
yeah,
you
it's
real
chaos up here. I mean, I admit that it's chaos. I mean, this has been a focal point for ineptitude with police up here. It's just been from Chauvin on, those other three officers on. It has been just total ineptitude from the mayor, from the city council. They don't know what they're doing, and how do we change this? We've got a person that was on our show a few weeks ago. She's running for the Hennepin County attorney to take Mike Freeman's place. And she's a black lady with a lot of experience. She's been a judge. She's been a city attorney. I have high hopes for her, but we won't know until if she gets in. But she has been, the Democrats have, what do they call when you get what do they call
endorsed.
it? A nomination endorsement.
Endorsement.
Yeah, she's been endorsed by the Democratic Party. So she's got a real good chance of getting this position. And so I hope that there's change with that. But you never know until people get in there. I mean,
I
if a
think here in
Herschel Walker,
Minnesota, yeah,
what's he going to do?
yeah, here
So
in Minnesota, we're reaping the not a benefit, all the crap that policymakers and decision makers previous to this year, the here and now, have set and put in place and were allowed to have set were allowed to keep them going and perpetuated through the years. And now it's hell and high water for a lot of people, etc., etc. Uh, and you got to deal with it some way.
but
And
I
even
still
and
have to
even
be upset
and
about
that
the
could
Amir law. I still have to be upset about that because
Yeah.
this man was not the subject of the warrant. He didn't have any
yeah
record. He was the wrong person. And for him to get killed like that, I mean, I just think this is something that if somehow we have to make a stand on that. Somehow we have to you can't go in and just kill anybody
yeah yeah.
just because
Yeah,
they're
but this
there
is
and
what
they
they've
have a
been
gun.
doing.
I mean,
They've been doing it.
Well, I'm
That's
with you
that.
on that, Anthony.
yeah, yeah.
And I've been looking at the recent agendas and amendments coming out of the city council, and here again, there's a resolution out there regarding the mayor and whomever in regards to that no knock policy being in
Well, he said that when he got
non-existent
elected. He
just
already
within
said
the
he was going to
last
deal
two
with it, and he
weeks.
didn't.
And I don't know, I don't know how that's going to go out. I don't even know how the committee that's been involved in, kind of overseeing what one of the committees was one of the levy woman is supposed to be over. I haven't heard how that's going. I can't find any information about that. So,
Ms. Sims,
yeah.
why don't you give us your final thoughts for this evening?
Um,
Now you didn't had all this to say this whole time, cutting everybody off.
yeah,
Miss Sims. Now you
yeah,
can't get the talk
and
together.
I even wrote down some things for this time and moment. Uh, One of the things was to give credit to Mr. Scott again in terms of his presence on the show up here, our Black News hosted by Don Allen. Don and Mr. Scott have invited various candidates in regarding, you know, what they want to say and questioning and whatever. And Mr. Scott is is holding firm and asking questions that the others others aren't able to deal with. So it's an avoidance. And Mr. Scott, in assessing and evaluating that, showing what's going on, even though Don says that he or that program doesn't endorse people, and my listening to it and all that he says and does, he doesn't verbally endorse it. But if you listen to a lot of the things that he says and people that he favors and whatever, verbally and through his actions, it's a passive aggressive nonverbal endorsement. And so I picked up on that in a lot of things that are going on. It just blew my mind. I was writing notes, but number one, my parting is to encourage Mr. Scott to hang in there in regards to so far what I've seen and how he's presented himself, and not only involve the content of his character, but also his thought and legitimate concerns of the people he loves and care about and his community. The end.
Mr. Scott, ringing endorsement there from Miss Sims. Although I think sometimes both of
Yeah.
you had the same optician, I think both of you sometimes have some rose-colored glasses there. You still not go, you
Well,
still
I
don't
think
want to.
I'm glad that there's one person on this show that is isn't supportive. I'm glad that there's at least one person on this show. But no, I enjoy the conversation. Dr. Casey makes some wonderful points. Brother War, I mean, what can I say? I mean, you can tell he's really put a lot of effort, time, and thought into what's going on and what we need to do. And we need more brothers like Brother War to come to the forefront. I think we really, as I say, the brother that says we are the foundational Americans, and we need to take our place here. We need to make these changes. We need to really say, for these next generations, they're depending on us, just like we depended on the ones before us. They're depending on us, and so we really have to step up, and we have to really try to make these changes and do whatever it takes. I mean, I still, like I say, the Amir thing is just something that really I can't wrap my head around that. How you can just go in and kill the wrong person and everything's fine. A man that wasn't involved, he wasn't part of it, and that this mentality, it's just so hard for me to wrap around. This young man has to die because
Yeah.
they said he had to die. So I thought I didn't know James hadn't sent me a link. I didn't know if I was too toxic or anything. He hadn't sent me a link, so finally he did send me a link. So I was glad to join the program.
We just scared you was gonna talk about the rap game.
Well, I will get to that. I will get. I will definitely have to get to that
Between the rap game and my tattoos, we don't know what you're gonna say, Mr. Scott.
See, there you go. See, I tried, boy.
I
See,
Open up that door.
again. I saw again.
I tried. Dr. Casey, you give us your final thoughts, and Brother Williams, you can take us home with some sense. Go ahead.
Listen, all my thoughts always have sense, even if they rhyme a little bit. Okay. Listen, so when it comes to homelessness, I think that it just needs to be more awareness made within our communities to try to alleviate that. But there also does need to be somebody to address their social and mental and spiritual health issues, because spiritual health is just as important and really affects your mental health. Um, Everybody doesn't have to be religious to be spiritual, but you do need some type of guidance to handle the spiritual aspects of living this human life. We are human beings, which are vessels that contain a spiritual soul. Your spirit is where your mind and thinking functions. Your soul is your heart. It contains all of everything that you are purposed to do. Every aspect of your wheelhouse is in your heart capacity. Whatever affects your heart, it affects your life. Whatever affects your life begins to affect your spirituality and your mind. Our vessels are just carriers of what we are here on earth to do. I would encourage all of the listeners here to go to Speaking Freedom TV to learn more about um, tapping into your soul, tapping into your mentality, understanding why you are the way you are, and learning different perspectives of the people around you. Because a lot of what we talk about here on this show, it is not only about who you are as a person, but it's more so about understanding the people that are around you. Because sometimes understanding yourself helps you understand the people around you, and understanding the people around you gives you a better understanding of yourself, because once you realize that everybody comes from totally different backgrounds, everybody comes from totally different understandings, even two people that live in the same exact house seemingly experiencing the same exact thing can come out of there with two different experiences. So when you think about life like that, it uh, leads you to having more compassion. It leads you to having more understanding. And then the last thing that really needs to happen is breaking the strongholds of religion and what religion has told you is acceptable, is right, and allowable, because there's a lot of things that religion doesn't teach you specifically about spirituality, although religion is supposed to address spiritual things. It really doesn't. It just tells you a whole bunch of rules and regulations about what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, and it tells you about being possessed by Christ. But it does not tell you about any other ways to deal with spiritual aspects of living in life. So um, when you think about things like that, my goal for the listeners when it comes to what I bring to this is to allow you to see things from a spiritual human behavior standpoint. That is a construct of all of your mental health, and the things that affect you there, your environmental things that affects your human behavior, and then also, last but definitely not least, your wheelhouse and what you're willing to seek and go after. So if I had to leave the viewers with something, it would be to um, be accountable for your soul, be accountable for your mind, your heart. Everything that you do is about you. You need to stand up for yourself. You need to be who you are. Own who you are, regardless of who has something to say. Own it, because you only get one life to live. And once it's gone, it's gone. And if you've never owned who you are, if you've never been proud of who you are, now is the time to do it. Again, rest in peace to DJ Slay and every other person that we've lost recently, whether it is to COVID complications and them damn ventilators that they don't be sitting people up to damn really take on the effect of what a ventilator does. Um, Life is only but a breath. We don't know when we leaving. We don't know when it's all gonna end. It could end tomorrow. Now, I personally like to speak life over myself. I like to speak living till I'm old enough to see my great grandkids have kids. But the reality is no matter how many confessions, how much life
26 years, 34 days, and 7 hours. 101.
correct.
I
That's
already
how
told you. That's
listen,
me.
listen. Speak life over yourself. A lot of these rappers that died, they died because they're always talking about, I'm
Yeah.
gonna die, somebody gonna kill me. What we gonna do? We gonna ride and shoot them too. This is
I don't know how I'm gonna go. All I know is when.
yeah, I listen, I want to live until I am in my 80s and or 90s. My great grandmother lived and she was like 95 or so, and she was still for a long time in very good health, still active. I just don't want to be miserable and be old because people is praying for me to live until I'm 100. If I'm going to be 100 and my back is going to be hurting and I'm going to be, frail, and I'm gonna be miserable more than I'm able to enjoy that 100 and be able to reflect on being 100, then God, you can have me at about 88 and vibrant. I want to go out and still dance and take a
Sunday,
life.
Sunday is my father-in-law's 100th birthday. We're planning a
Wow.
big
Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
celebration for him.
Yeah.
He's a
Blessing.
veteran.
Blessing.
He's a
Yeah.
commander of the Black Johnny Baker Post up here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and has been for years. Longtime
Praise God.
contractor,
Yeah.
I would
and
love if
so
you could bring him on and
and
let
he
him share some wisdom because older. I always
oh
want to know
he's
what older
unbelievable,
people.
unbelievable what he's been through
I
and what he shares with us.
this is my closing remarks, Miss Scott. I always want to know. I always want to know. When uh Obama won, I called my great grandmother. She was still alive at the time, and I just wanted to hear what she felt about that experience after everything that she watched. Growing up, coming from a Native American household, and all of the things that she's seen as a black woman, and it is very liberating and freeing and encouraging to hear people who have lived a century or anywhere close to a century to share not only their experience but really show you and tell you what it is and what it is to live to see 100 years was 10 dang on decades. That's a long time. I've been here for 4 decades so far, and it's quite funny to talk to younger people who like I was telling my children or something. They like, but you ain't lived long enough to know what I know based on what I've seen since I've been alive. You only 12, 13 years old. You don't know nothing. So allow yourself to be open to learning from 12 and 13-year olds because they can teach you something. But it's some things that you know more about. So just feed into yourself. Feed into it is not selfish to feed into yourself. Who else is gonna take care of you if you don't take care of yourself? You can't take care of nobody if you ain't well. So feed into your soul.
With that, Brother Williams, take us home.
All right. Well, I want to close out by going first off over an announcement here in Lakeside. And James, you know how racist Lakeside is. There was a 16-year-old girl that was stabbed, and what appears to be it coming out is a hate crime by another teenager who was yelling, profanity, calling her bitch, nigga, that, and it was stabbing her. And so it took him a couple of days to finally arrest the guy, but they arrested him, and the sheriff's department is going to be holding a town hall meeting tomorrow at the Lakeside Community Center at 6 p.m. So tomorrow at the Lakeside Community Center at 6 p.m., the sheriff's department is going to be holding a town hall meeting to discuss the issues surrounding this case because this is a major deal. And for the address of Lakeside Community Center is 9841 Vine Street, Lakeside, California. And I want us to get the black community to pack this place out as much as possible. Why? Because Lakeside is one of them areas to where the Klan, the neo Nazis, all of them go and house themselves and consolidate their power at. And it's enough. Enough is enough. We need to get more of our people involved. If we want things to get better, then we need to show up in force, and we need to hold ourselves accountable, like Dr. Casey was saying. And I'm adamant about the youth being involved because one of the biggest problems I continue to see is that our elders are used to being active, used to doing this, and used to carrying a banner, but don't have nobody to pass that baton back to. We have to find ways to wake up the youth and get the youth involved because part of the problem is as when we define the family structure, we're not including the community as part of the family structure. And as long as participating in your liberation, your freedom, your rights, and your fighting against oppression is an option, and it's an option that's on the back burner by most of our black families. As long as that's the case, we're going to continue to see these same patterns, historical patterns and trends constantly go up and constantly reoccur. Why? Because we keep waiting for a few people to make differences, a few people to get in office, a few people to make change. We all need to take part in our and do our part in making change. It's going to take more of us involved, and it starts with getting the youth actively involved and engaged in our liberation. Period. Point blank. We can't just hold that accountability with the elders. We all have to do our part, and that's the thing that we need to be pushing is the appetite for the youth to want to be involved. So we have to change the appetite and change the things that attract them to something that's going to be progressive, that has to do with their liberation, fighting oppression, and building a better community for our people to operate from. So once again, my closeout statement: town hall meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Lakeside Community Center, where the sheriff's department is going to be talking about this specific incident. And we need to let it be known that this definitely was a hate crime, and it needs to be prosecuted as a hate crime. And just like how they prosecute our teenagers, 16 years old, as adults, they need to do the same damn thing with this person, and also bring up charges on the adults that was present, that also monitored and watched this child attack a black child. So it's not just that one that did the attacking, but it's also some adults that was involved. And so we demand justice. We want our people to come out, and we need to make a change. And Lakeside need to stop that mess, and we need to hold them accountable. All power to the people. That's all I got.
Mr. Williams, if you choose to go on my Facebook page, LA Sims, and ask the friend and befriend me, I will pass your message, and you send me that message. I will pass it out to my contacts.
Got it.
That's how I
Now,
can. How I can help you, and I have contacts all over.
if viewers would like to help me reach my 350,000 mark of viewers on Speaking Freedom TV, please tap in to speakingfreedomtv.org. I am almost at 350,000 views, and I want to just impact people, so tap in.
And if people want to know more of how I've been involved in my organization in regards to the homeless, unsheltered, and homelessness, they can go to Micah, MICAH .org, and see what we've done. And if you go under the staff, you'll find me and some background on me.
And if you want to hear some more shenanigans from me and Mr. Scott, y'all tune in on Thursday. We'll be talking a little sports. We'll talk about his Minnesota Vikings, my Steelers, and Mr. Scott. Love you, man. Talk to you next week. Have a great night, everyone.
Timberwolves, Minnesota
All right.
Timberwolves.
And-
They'll
Peace
beat
and love
Memphis.
till the
Minnesota
next time.
Timberwolves.
Bye bye. Good night, everybody. Good night. Good night.
Good night. Uh, I got your address for Sunday, Mr. Scott. I mean Thursday.